J. Cole is one of my favorite artists, and he taught us something really interesting. So, Cole gave us two very different reactions for two very similar kinds of truth. In 2016, he dropped a song, I don't know if you guys remember this, called Foldin Clothes. The release got called boring. I mean, online, Cole got laughed at for releasing this single. But earlier this year in 2026, 10 years later, on his album The Fall Off, J. Cole had a song called Legacy, and it got praised as a standout track on the record. Legacy and J. Cole got called super deep and a wonderful story told by a wonderful storyteller. Same man, same sensitivity, different decade of public patience. And honestly, I think that this tells us much more about ourselves than it does about him as a rapper, artist, and cultural auteur. See, that's the thing about taste. Sometimes people don't hate the message, they just hate how close the message is to real life. Sometimes the public calls something boring when what it really means is this is too honest. This is too ordinary. This is too much like the life that I prefer to not have or at least momentarily escape. And so maybe the reason people missed or considered folding clothes a whiff is the same reason that they miss or don't really get jazzed up about laundromats, particularly as customers, or definitely when I talk to folks about my strategy. Um, or maybe it's the same reason that we mostly get us excited about businesses, companies, and organizations that feel like they're offering something new and shiny. At least from my study, that's where most of the capital pours into. It's this thing that's uniquely American that doesn't really appreciate the fact that not everything important arrives dressed like a blockbuster. Businesses like laundromats, they work the same. First, they were a necessity used to just be normal. It was boring. But if you pay attention, they're still quietly one of the most important things in our society, in our neighborhoods. Then they became this marker of class, having become for people who have to do this or who must do this kind of ingredient or byproduct or a downright nuisance to be navigated on the road to the American dream. And it feels like the pendulum is kind of swinging back where we finally started again to see and talk about these things as neighborhood infrastructure. And I want to argue that just as businesses are not to be reduced to being merely profit maximizing vehicles, and we should think of them as vessels for community and culture and historic preservation, social meaning. Hell, laundromats are not just a place where your socks go to reconsider their choices in hopes that they can make it out of the place without losing the mate, right? It's bigger than that. It's deeper than rap, as my hometown player Rick Ross would say. And I think how I round out this video is by saying that's why I care about legacy in music, in business, in ownership, in laundromats, in culture, and in life. When I talk about legacy to a selling owner who's tired of fighting through her arthritis each time she collects coins from the machines and rolls them in denomination wrappers and then hauls all of them to the bank for depositing, or when I'm pitching my rap to a banker, a capital provider who's saying their mission aligned and is ascending in their career, but they're really only focused and looking on for high value, eye popping deals and would prefer not to have to struggle with the headaches of SBA 7A compliance for a little piddly laundromat over there on the south side. I'm really talking about the same question my man Cole is asking. The same set of questions rather. What are we actually leaving behind? What do we care about leaving behind? A performance or something people can still use, something that they can feel, something we can all be proud of. As the late Maya Angelou taught us, people will forget what you said, and people will certainly forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. Good legacies pass on to our children and our grandchildren money, sure, other material things and assets, as well as those little places that are important to our few and small village, yet most of us hardly notice until they disappear and people talk about them. But great legacies, they pass on in art, they pass on patience, they pass on the only real thing that survives through our labor, and that's love, that's dignity.